look, Crispy Bomb, you were hesitant this morning because you didn't want to sound like you were repeating yourself, because we did have our, talk on Tuesday where we broke down the, Xbox in 2024. But being that this is a multi-plat show, I'm very interested to get your hot take of the gaming industry in 2024. And again, this is one of those things where it's a conversational podcast. There are no right and wrong answers. There's nothing scripted. For you, what were some of the standouts for 2024, and what were some of the things that might or may have let you down for the gaming industry as a whole?
Well, see, you gotta look at the landscape. It's like I'm the type of consumer where I look at, what have you done for me lately type status. So being that, I work as much as I do, and like this is the first time in I'd say 5 months that I've been on Breakfast with Boom, which is like my home. I feel like I feel at home here. It was so long, my tenure with Breakfast with Boom. So I look at the landscape and I say, Xbox has given me any game I could possibly want. And I think they are just like going to double down on this, and they're going to ignore the naysayers for once. And I think they need to ignore it a little bit more in this upcoming year. But I feel like they went through their tribulations at the beginning of the year. They said what they said, they did what they did. And now you're starting to see the fruits of the labor. And it really starts with, I think Indiana Jones is a pivotal moment. Even Hellblade, you could say at the beginning of the year, mid beginning of the year, was a pivotal moment. And them saying, hey, we have the visual narrative now. We gave you a third person game.
Great point.
We gave you a first person game and built both in the two engines that we seem to be going for at this point. And even Digital Foundry could not deny us that we have the visuals for you, and two different aspects of play style and gaming itself. And they both, from what I hear from anybody that's played those games, made you feel the characters' emotions, or made you feel the aspects of the games that not necessarily would be like thrown off the page like, hey, this is here, you must play this. But more or less, once you start playing it, you feel something. And I think gaming has lost that in a way. And I think we're starting to see Xbox really fold into that and say, no, it hasn't. We have games like a lot of people like myself are like, next year is going to be crazy. And really, you want to see the feels, go look at reactions, because there's hundreds of reactions to Gears of War E-Day being announced. And this is where I go and say, like, I re-downloaded Doom Eternal because of all the talk about the Halo Doom crossover. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, isn't this what they want though? Like, they have done so much. They have done things that we consider egregious at times. And to some of us say it was great, or it's forward thinking. Some of us say, no, we shouldn't do that. And I'm really sitting here like, okay, but we let Gears cook and look at the reaction. Why not let Halo cook for 6 years? I know some of you guys love Halo so much, but let it cook. They changed the studio name. They're doing basically the same thing they did. They went from Black Tusk Studios to the Coalition. Okay, like, let them cook. Bring in actual Halo fans, because that's what Gears has done. I mean, with that E-Day trailer, that's what I say. You got to bring in people that actually care about the IP. IP is everything at this point. We're talking billion-dollar IPs. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, like games that have, 6 iterations. plus. So I say like certain games, they need to really nurture and actually show the respect they deserve and not, half-heart it. And I think Xbox is finally starting to get it. I think, yes, that's going to involve going a little bit multi-plat at times. Does that take away from the success that, the Xbox game studios have? No. But I think we're at a point where even journalists are starting to say, writing's on the wall, man. You want to say, oh, they're just, they have way too much money and that's what they can do, or they're investing in the future of gaming. That's on you. But I feel like you've seen what they're capable of, and this is only scratching the surface. And I think once they just kick the door down, there's going to be a lot of people that are not happy. And there's also going to be a lot of people that are like, what's this train wreck going on over here? Man, this game looks really good. So, 2024 has been kind of, like it ended well, like really well, but the beginning was So can we see them fold that into learning from their experience and say, well, we should start the year pretty good too, not to just wait until Hellblade 2 like we did, kind of. You know what I mean? Yeah, we had our little, third party games, stuff like that, were in Game Pass. But at the end of the day, like, it really came down to people were waiting for Hellblade, which, hey, a lot of awards it's gotten, and then you bookend the year with Indiana Jones. Even though it's coming to PlayStation, I don't see a lot of people saying that. Like, hey, this is not worthy of anything, or it's, even going like, I want it only to be on Xbox. I mean, I think that's why Disney is talking about, doing multiple games, because Xbox is agnostic and being like, we'll do whatever is going to be right for the gamer. And I think it's going to take a long, hard road this year, but it's going to be pretty incredible at the end, in my opinion.
I mean, great points all around. I think you're onto something. Look, the start of 2024, I clearly remember the podcast saying that if it was me, I wouldn't give PlayStation a freaking thing. It would be, again, I would have run it like Peter Moore. I've said that 1,000 times before, and he ran a tight ship. I love Peter. I think he is a phenomenal member of the industry. He has been for years. He literally did things that no one has done before. Getting tattoos, and he was just so bombastic the way his persona was. But if there's one thing that I give myself a bit credit, is not being left behind. Like, I'm an old dog. I'm the old guard, and I have certain sensibilities and opinions that probably will never change. I have a strong feeling, and I don't think it's, again, I'm never going to quote unquote bend the knee to see Halo, Gears, or Forza on a PlayStation. But that's because I'm an old man. And you know what? I understand where my faults lie. The industry is changing. The industry has changed. It will continue to manifest into things that we never thought were possible. I know we make fun of it, cats and dogs playing together, in harmony, like they said in Ghostbusters, right? Like, PlayStation games are going to be on Xbox. Xbox games are going to be on PlayStation. Nintendo, look, I don't discount them. They're one of my favorite brands. I have been a Nintendo fanboy since 1985. Now, if you give me, a Sega versus a Nintendo, I'm sorry, Nintendo, I love you and everything, but I'm gonna go Sega because I've been a Sega kid forever. But where gaming was is not where it's going to be in the future, and that future is now. And things are happening, things are changing. Some of the stuff I will have, has haphazardly be like, yeah, I guess, but listen, it is what it is. And Crispy's onto something here. I think that we are When you look back at 2024, at least for me, I've said it quite a bit during the last couple of weeks, that there's been a lot of peaks and valleys. For me, the valleys or the low points of 2024 has to be the human factor. I think a lot of us overlook that, and I'm not saying that you're doing it on purpose. I think that when you hear 1,000 people lost their jobs, it's egregious on any level. But unless you're one of those people, you don't have the same. You can't equate their feeling. If it hasn't happened to you, if you're working, and hopefully that you are, and you're getting your salary, and you're not worrying about, holy shit, how am I going to pay April's rent because I just got laid off? You have feelings for these people, but you don't equate it as well. And I think a lot of us just want our games, and we want to go play our games, and we want to retreat to play these games because the world kind of sucks sometimes. And that's why we play games, right? Like, that is why you are so into a particular game, because you drowned out the rest of the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of us do that. Sometimes you just need to retreat from the world, put on a pair of headphones, shut the lights, and get into the character and play the game that you're playing, and just enjoy your time, whether that be 20 minutes or 20 hours, right? That is what we do as gamers. But there are, again, a lot of highlights for 2024. Again, as someone, and look, I'm going to keep saying it because I like being transparent. I like putting myself out there. Even if I get the virtual tomatoes, it's fine, right? But as someone who runs an entire household based on a pension, it is sometimes there are difficult decisions where there is a game that in the past I don't even think, I just buy. That's not the case anymore. I need to be an adult. And again, Mrs. Boom and I, we're doing pretty damn good, to be honest with you. So we're not hurting, but you have to be more forward thinking, I should say, about how you spend on a collector's edition that's $300. And that's just the way it is. And again, the value proposition, which we're going to get into the second half of the show, because I think that 2025, the same way we're starting to see the journalistic community kind of turn a little bit. I'm not saying that they're going to start dumping on PlayStation like they did in the PlayStation 3 days. What I'm suggesting is that we are at a point where Xbox has become undeniable. You can no longer look at Xbox as, the redheaded stepchild, or the little brother or the little sister. That they have walked into the room, and I hate to say this, and people may push back on this, they are the big man on campus now. They're the guy that was beat up in high school, right? In their sophomore year, right? Got sand kicked in their face. Remember the comics? You guys are old. You guys remember the back of the comic books? They would show like the guy, he was like a little skinny weakling guy, and he got the sand kicked in his face at the beach. And then the next season, this guy comes back and he's cock D. And now he beats up the bully. And now all the girls are hanging on him, right? That's Xbox, folks. You may not want to admit it if you're a PlayStation guy or gal, if you're a Nintendo fan, but Xbox is the big man on campus. As a publisher, they're the biggest publisher in gaming. They outclass EA, they outclass Take-Two, they outclass Ubisoft and Nintendo and PlayStation, and all of their games are going to be everywhere. And it's hard to deny that. And what's interesting, and again, this is where we get to the second half of the show, and after we get Fuzzy's hot take on 2024, this is where Xbox Game Pass becomes almost undeniable. Like, I think that if you don't have Xbox Game Pass, I think you're doing it wrong, folks. I really do, especially from the amount of games that are going to be in there. There's got to be a point where if you are a diehard gamer and you look to Xbox first party plus all of the indies and the second party deals and the third party deals, you're gonna have to at one point be like, you know what? I honestly can no longer be like, no, I don't want an Xbox. And you know what? You don't have to get an Xbox. You can pretty much play anywhere you want now, and that's the beauty of, well, this is an Xbox. But listen, Fuzzy, 2024 levied a lot of really great games. There were, again, a lot of highs and lows. The layoffs, at least for me, are probably the worst of it all because of the human element that a lot of people, and again, no offense to you if it doesn't matter to you, I get it. I get if it's not happening to you, maybe it doesn't matter. But as someone that is as plugged in as I am, and I do this show 5 days a week, it bothers me that people lost a job because I'm not worrying about paying my rent because I retired, thankfully. But that doesn't mean that I don't worry. And now some of these people that make the games that we love, they don't have a job anymore. So that to me is the lowest point of the year. But I want to get your hot takes. What were the standouts for you in 2024?
I think the biggest standout for me is, and we're supposed to talk about this more so later on in the show, but for me, the biggest standout was Game Pass and everything it delivered this year. The beginning of the year, I know as far as first party, some people thought it was a little bit on the light side, but there were still things still going into the service throughout the year. But that being said, I try to look at it as also being retired. How much money am I saving? How much fun am I having? The layoffs, yes, they are a low spot or a heavy spot as far as my outlook on gaming in 2024. But I try not to focus on that as much just because it doesn't seem like we've come to a resolution or a settled time period where things are stabilized. Like, I think there's still going to be a flux of layoffs, although we don't hear about it as much at the current moment. There's still a few smaller studios that are kind of struggling to keep the lights on kind of deal at this point. And we still haven't seen all of the fallout from what was that other publisher that basically banked on the handshake.
The one that owns Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal. Yeah. Holy crap.
I'm having a brain fart. So
I help us out, folks. Help us out.
Something with an E, if I'm not mistaken. But
what is the name of that publisher? Oh my god. We'll get to it. Hold on. I'll find it.
With that, yeah. But with all of that being said, Embracer Group. Thank you. When it comes to how the employees in that space are doing, there are some better outlooks as far as, yes, they're now starting to be able to unionize. That's something that I know wasn't a thing in gaming or even considered to be a thing in gaming for years. And now after the merger, Microsoft has kind of opened up that door. At some point, I'm pretty sure they will look at some of it as like, maybe that wasn't the best idea, but I think overall for the workspace moving forward, I think it is something that's in the best interest of, the future of gaming as from the gamer standpoint and the industry as a whole. So that is kind of a positive in the sea of negative with layoffs and things like that. But I want to move past that only because there's still so much stuff in development. There are so many new studios. Like it's not a guarantee, but it's like for almost every studio that closes, there's 2 or 3 that, open up their place. Now they may not be at the same size and scope as the ones that close, but there is that continuation. This industry is growing at a record pace. And I don't want to say there is no ceiling, but there is a point where we're going to have to get used to some of this turmoil. But all of that moving forward, there's a lot of games currently out there for us to play. I think someone on Blue Sky had a stat. A good member of the community, I think it's Knoble, was saying like there was like 18,000 games released on Steam last year. And wow. I would say about probably 60% of those wound up on console to some extent on either PlayStation, Nintendo, or Xbox. So there's tons of games, and it stands to be even bigger for 2025. So we have that outlook to look forward to. The industry is still growing. It's still flourishing. We still have a lot on our plate and probably backlogs to boot. But for me, the highlights have been some of the older games that still get support. Like I think one of the things that people tend to ignore with Xbox is how, yeah, at times when they released the game, maybe it wasn't to everybody's liking, or it wasn't, complete as far as what they wanted, but they do stick to it. Even if there's some sacrifices made as far as whether it's later closures, but they are always supporting their games, and whether it's expansions or seasons or content updates, like DLC for like Forza Horizon 5. That's a game that came out in 2021, and they're still going strong every month. There's new like 4 weekly, activity season things to go through. New cars still being added to that. State of Decay 2, State of Decay 2 just wrapped up like about a month or so ago. It's 38th or 39th update since its launch, and I think that was like 2019. So, or maybe it was 2018, but that game has seen a complete change. And that was like my big game of the year. Not necessarily my game of the year, but a game that a few bugs kind of turned me off from it when it launched. And I figured, well, I'll get back to it, after they do a few patches. And boy, it is a different, well, I wouldn't say it's a different game, but it's definitely a night and day difference from when it launched to today. And they've added tons of content in between. And they've, upgraded some of those that had like the basic edition to like the Juggernaut edition and things along those lines. So they're definitely sticking to their games. And now that team can, be 100% focused on State of Decay 3, which that's another one that's in the future. We know the roadmap. It's not too far around the corner for us. Things like when it comes to Halo, I know that there's a lot of people that were up in arms about the seasons and stuff in the beginning. I don't hear any of those complaints anymore because they've fixed the glitch basically in making sure that there's always content for people. There's always been expansions and things like that for, things like Diablo, which they just recently had their major expansion, but they've been doing updates on that game and listening to the community, which that's another thing Xbox doesn't really get credit for. Now that they may not listen to us wanting to see a Doom guy versus Master Chief kind of crossover or other parties suggesting that, but they do listen to the customers, the gamers that are telling them, hey, this game doesn't feel balanced, or this game doesn't feel right as far as the playability, or this mechanic is broken, or this loot drop system needs some reworking or something. And they take that under advisement. And a lot of times we see them in the favor of the gamer, making it where it is more enjoyable. It brings people back to the game that may have put it down from, months ago from whatever issue that they ran into. And now they're releasing games of quality. And I would say they've been releasing games of quality now, but it's not just the gamers noticing. It's now the media that's noticing it as well. When you look at things like Hellblade, when you look at things like Indiana Jones, these aren't games that, needed 52 patches to get, up to date and stuff. Now, I'll admit, even Starfield, when that released, there were a few bugs, none for me that were game breaking. Eventually I ran into some, but I was playing like a madman. So having 5, continuous playthroughs or simultaneous playthroughs, trying everything from being the pirate to being the, space sheriff to just being the bad guy, killing everybody that moves too much or whatever, it's bound to happen. But that's a game that I know a lot of people would say, oh, it's Bethesda, but that was probably their least buggy game that they've ever released in their history until, we'll see how things go in the future. And I think they've gotten to a point where they're in a good rhythm of making sure their games are supported, like Fallout 76, which you had that TV show. Yes, I know we're all waiting for a Fallout 5, but all things considered, with Elder Scrolls in the pocket right now, and that being probably one of the next big titles released outside of their online studio that's been working on something for about 4 or 5 years at least, that hopefully we get to see in June. Every studio within Xbox has been cooking. And the big thing now is we don't know what June holds for us. We have some idea of, some of the things that they've rumored as far as, project names, or, well, the studio released their game 5 years ago, so there's got to be something else in the oven right now, like your Double Fines and such. But it's a great space for Xbox right now. I can't say as much for PlayStation. I would say of all the years I've been a PlayStation owner, this is probably the least I've played on PlayStation since I've bought PlayStation since PlayStation 1. Just still playing Gran Turismo, which the only real thing that they did, they released a track or two in a couple of cars throughout the year, but nothing of, I would say, grand significance in comparison, other than they just released a demo or a trial version of that as opposed to putting on PC, which I guess growing pains of them learning how to be a multi-platform entity. They had an awesome game at the beginning of the year with Helldivers. Had a lot of fun with a lot of people in the community playing that. And then they kind of spoiled the waters when it came time to do the PSN ID, which I think that's another low point. But for me personally as a gamer, it's like PlayStation had the example in Xbox on how you convince people. Although I don't foresee PlayStation creating its own operating system. Windows being on probably 80% of PCs out there is probably a big help as far as making it easy for people to link their Xbox account to their Windows account or anything along those lines. I mean, it's kind of intertwined at that point. But as far as when it comes to PlayStation learning these, they still feel like they're a couple of years behind the power curve as far as getting it figured out. And then, from my standpoint, I hope they do get it figured out soon, because I would love to have that cross save and cross progression ability in some of those games. Like, I will buy Ghost of Tsushima if I know the progression was carried over. I would buy, I'll probably wind up buying a Gran Turismo for PC if they ever choose to release it, just for the fact that from a modding standpoint, which unfortunately Forza doesn't, they frown upon mods, which is understandable. It's primarily an online competitive game. But there are those that want to have like an offline mode where maybe we want to have our own custom races where we can pick the paint schemes of the cars and what track and the weather conditions to a T kind of thing to recreate some actual races that were, in history and so forth. But, PlayStation right now is not where I would expect them to be at this point in the generation. 65 million consoles out there. They're now still fighting themselves with this games as a service type of deal. I really hope they figure it out before Fair Games is released. We'll see if it's another Concord. I hope that doesn't happen to them any more times, just for the fact that I don't want to see them bleeding money on something that they still have to press forward and make their splash in. As far as games as a service, that's going to be their recurring income that they can kind of rely on from microtransactions or seasons and stuff like that people make purchases of. But I'm not the biggest Nintendo fan, just because I was a Sega kid growing up, so been kind of ignoring them. But the potential with this upcoming Switch 2 is huge, and I think just portable gaming in general. We've seen the rise of the handhelds, and it's now got even Xbox looking at finally making a portable device, which, with their experience with software and operating systems, I'm looking forward to this device. Hopefully they announce it sometime soon this year. Not to take away from Switch 2, because it's not going to matter in that regard. The Switch 2 is going to be its own monster in itself. But I'm hoping, in the way Xbox has been moving, blurring the lines between console and PC. I think that's the biggest thing I look forward to, and seeing this progression as far as the play anywhere mantra that they've started. What was that, like 5 or 6 years ago, when people were like, oh, why would they put games on PC at the same time? Having it where you have that fluid ability to be able to go from your laptop to your console to your phone and vice versa, in any of those orders, and pick up where you left off in the game is a huge win, I think, for the gamers in general. Things like quick resume, also a huge win for gamers. Yes, I know it's a bit of a older feature, but I still enjoy the fact that quick resume, I can have my Forza Horizon game in the background. Yes, it doesn't always work the greatest when there's updates and transitions and seasons or weekly things, but if you're like playing a bit of Forza and then you hop over to State of Decay and then a half hour later back to Forza, you're not skipping a beat. And that's the biggest thing. It's like, oh, I I don't really have the free time. While it's loading or while the game is closing and then this one opening, maybe I can go get a drink. No, it's like when I'm set to do gaming time, it's like have all snacks and drinks readily available until it's like, all right, I've been gaming too much. I need to take a break. But just in general, my outlook on 2024 has been that of enjoyment and excitement for what's ahead, but just enjoying everything from playing Dragon's Dogma 2, State of Decay 2. Like, it was a lot of sequels for me this year. Have played 2. Yeah, I think this has been probably my favorite year in gaming, outside of the rose-colored glasses of when you're a kid and you get that first console. This has like been a close second. It's brought me back to enjoying this hobby in a more relaxed way. You may have noticed I've taken a little bit of a step away from social media as far as the console war posts, just because it's like I rather play games than talk to a brick wall. Like it seems like a lot of people are set in their ways and that, Xbox bad, PlayStation good. And it's like you see other people make YouTube videos on how like they were foolish for believing that all these years, and they get the console, whether it's a gift or something they went out and purchased just as a secondary deal, and they realize, hey, there's a lot to this ecosystem, there's a lot to this device, there's a lot to these games, and they're enjoying themselves. And I've been that way ever since, like, what was that, 2014, going from a PlayStation only fan to being a multi-console person, where I really didn't bother with that. It was like, I got my PC and I got my PlayStation. That's all I really need. 2014 was different for me, and Xbox has helped that grow even further ever since that time. So I just say, for all of those out there, work on your backlog, because 2025, we're not ready for it in general, as far as what to expect from just Xbox alone, let alone third parties out there. And I would say enjoy this hobby. Not that it's like a thing while it lasts, but I think this will help things grow. The more you enjoy it, the more you'll spread that joy, telling other people like, man, you have to check this game out, or man, you need to check out Game Pass, because this is like when we were renting stuff at Blockbuster, this is 10 times better, because you don't have to leave your house to do that type of thing. I think we're in for a treat, moving forward. And I hope this industry stabilizes on the employee front, but the flow of these games, I don't foresee this slowing down anytime soon. And that's awesome to me.